Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Erika De Benedetti, and I will manage this webinar. Before to get started, I would like to give you a couple of information. Firstly, this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be available on biostimulant.com website and on our social media in the next days. Secondly, I invite you to use the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. We will collect your questions and answer to at least some of them at the end of the presentation. The topic of today is Plant Biostimulants Regulatory Framework, Overview and Prospects at International Level. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers of today. Laetitia Fourié, who is a regulatory manager for Hello Nature, a worldwide company producer of organic fertilizers and plant biostimulants for 50 years. She is engaged in the development of EU regulation on fertilizing products since 2016, when the first text was published for comments. She has been involved on behalf of ECOFI on the task force labeling, which aimed to redact guidance for labeling in compliance with the EU regulation 2019-1009, and she was the team leader of the group dedicated to the general requirements. She is engaged as expert in several groups of standardization at the EU level, CEN-TC 455 and CEN-TC 260, and at global level, ISO-TC 134. She is the president of AFAIA, the French National Association representing producers of growing media, organic fertilizers, and soil improvers and biostimulants. And she also represents Hello Nature in ABIC's working group. Our second speaker of today will be Benoît Planques, who is the Chief Compliance Officer for Hello Nature. He is engaged since the first discussion about the European Harmonization Regulation for Fertilizing Products in Paris in 2009. His work has increasingly focused on plant biostimulants, and he has been actively following the development of the EU regulation on fertilizing products for the past years as expert on the Commission Expert Group on Fertilizing Products from the European Commission. Engaged on the standardization of fertilizing products since 1998, he created in 2017, with the support of EPIC and HAFNOR, the European Technical Committee CEN-TC 455 on plant biostimulants, which has in charge to develop several standards for the compliance with the EU regulation. He chairs this European Committee and its French Mirror Committee. He is also an expert on ISO-TC 134 and acts as a convener of Working Group 6 on beneficial substances and biostimulants. So, welcome Bob, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks a lot, Erika, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to start today on the very hot topic on the regulatory framework on plant biostimulants. So the idea of this webinar is to make a trip around the globe to have different stop in different areas and to discuss where we are about the regulation of plant biostimulant and what are the next step. First of all, I would like to remind to all of you the very important thing, the difference between the product. Biostimulant, also called beneficial substances or biofertilizer, depending the area, are classified as fertilizing product. And they are different from the phytosanitary product called biopesticide or biocontrol. The frontiers is on the abiotic stress. If a product acts as abiotic stress, is a fertilizing product. If it's not abiotic stress, it's a phytosanitary. Biostimulant, as I say, the mode of action is based on the claims. The main claims, because there is difference between the different parts of the world, but we can sum up that a biostimulant acts against the abiotic stress, so thermal, water, salt, and so on. Biostimulants act as to improve the quality of the production, and we have different type of improvement of the quality. And the last thing is the improvement of the nutrient uptakes or the nutrient confined in the soil. Plant biostimulant could act in different parts of the plant, but also in the soil. On the flower, on the fruit, on the seed, on the root, on the soil. So plant biostimulant is not an unique product, but is a diversity of product and act differently. So it's very important to classify the product, but also to define the mode of action of the product. Very important also is to have an overview of the tendency of the market. Europe is today the most advanced market in terms of sale and regulation, and following by Asia, Pacific, Latam, US, and Canada. It's a quite similar market, but until now it's a non-harmonized regulation like we have in Europe. The sale today, we can estimate that is more or less more than 2,000 million of dollars, and the increase depending the area of the turnover is between 10 and 15% per year. So it's a very emergent market, and this market need to be regulated to be sure that the plant biostimulants are well defined, are very effectiveness for the farmers, and act to help and to solve some issue on the farms. So now we will, as I said, have an overview of different parts of the world. So we will start with the European regulation, then we will go in USA, in India, in China, South Africa, Chile, Brazil, and Mexico. And at the end of the presentation, you can ask the question regarding this presentation. So I will leave the floor to Laetitia to present to you the European regulation on fertilizing products, and especially dedicated on plant biostimulants.
Hello, everybody. So I'm pleased to present you the update on the fertilizing product regulation. So this regulation for Europe concerns all fertilizing materials, including biostimulants. It defines 7 functions of products, which are called PFCs, and 14 types of components, which are called CMCs. This regulation defines in a harmonized way the sanitary rules, the quality criteria, the labeling, claims, and conformity evaluation for all these fertilizing materials. It will be the way to market to the 27 member states until July 2022. Of course, even if this regulation aims to harmonize the rules, the national rules will not be repealed, and products will be still placed on the market if necessary under these national rules. So there is a list of different component material categories that can be used to formulate fertilizing products. In orange, you can see the most common materials for formulating biostimulants. So we can use virgin materials as the CMC1, plant parts or plant extracts, which are CMC2. Also, food industry byproduct can be used under the CMC6, microorganisms under CMC7, and derived product with the meaning of the ABP regulation as CMC10. So, of course, other CMC can be used, but at present, these ones are the most used for formulating biostimulants. So, let's talk about the definition. So, the regulation defines plant biostimulants as a urofertilizing product, the function of which is to stimulate plant nutrition processes independently of the product nutrient content, and with the sole aim of improving one or more of the following characteristics of the plant and the plant rhizosphere. So we talk about nutrient use efficiency, tolerance to abiotic stress, crop quality traits, or availability of confined nutrients in the soil or rhizospheres. So The regulation defines two types of plant biostimulants. First of all, microbial plant biostimulants, which are biostimulants consisting in microorganism or consortium of microorganisms, which are listed in the CMC7, which is a positive list of microorganisms and which contain Azobacter spp, mycorrhizal fungi, Rhizobium spp, and Azospirillum spp. So microbial plant biostimulant can be only formulated by using these microorganisms. On the other side, there is a non-microbial plant biostimulant, which are all other products except microbial plant biostimulants. In terms of safety parameters, it is necessary to evaluate several heavy metals, including cadmium, chromium-6, lead, mercury, nickel, inorganic arsenic, copper, and zinc. In addition, total chromium must be checked for labeling, and phosphonate shall not exceed 0.5% by mass. There is also a specific requirement in terms of safety parameters. For microbial biostimulants, there is a list of microorganisms, pathogenic microorganisms, that have been evaluated to conclude of the conformity of the product. So there is a list presented here. And for non-microbial biostimulants, this list is shorter and includes only Salmonella spp, Escherichia coli, and Enterococci. So then it is very important to realize a conformity assessment before putting the CE mark on the product. So there is some specific requirement which exists on components, but the conformity is only evaluated on final products. For evaluation of the quality and safety criteria, we will use mainly standards developed by the CNTC 455 experts. So these standards will be available as technical specification from April 2022. And from April 2024, this TS will be converted into harmonized European standards, also called HEN standards. According to the type of the product and of the component material which are used, the manufacturer will have to choose a specific module to assess the conformity. So the first one is a module B+C, which is a EU type examination plus a conformity to type based on internal production process, and which has to be done on each product. Which product has to be evaluated with this module. On the other hand, we have a module D1, which is a quality assurance of the production process and which concerns the audit of the whole production process of the company. For all the module, it is necessary to realize a technical documentation on which a list of documents are required. And this CE mark can be applied on the label only if all the requirements are satisfied. So to sum up, the conformity assessment has to be done by choosing a module, B+C or D1 for plant biostimulants. Then the CE mark can be put on the product, and then the product can be marketed in Europe. And then the product is submitted to the market surveillance. So now I let Benoît talk about USA.
Yes. So now in USA, where we are. First of all, just to put on light the main key players. So there is a lot of discussion between different organisms. So the first one is the USDA. So it's the Department of Agriculture of USA. Work on food, agriculture, economic development, science, and natural resources. And I will say in some minutes what are the jobs of USDA. We have also the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency to work mainly on environmental subjects. Then we have the AFCO, the Association of American Plant Food Control Officials, to facilitate the uniformity and the consensus among the states. Then we have representative of the producer of plant biostimulant from BPIA, the Biological Product Industry Alliance, and the Biostimulant Council. It's merged between the TFI and Biostimulant Coalition. So this different organism is working since some years to create an harmonized regulation in the US, because today in USA there is no federal regulation for plant biostimulants. So it means that each state can regulate the marketing of plant nutrient products, and by this way have possibility to regulate plant biostimulant. So there is a lot of variation in the labeling, in the request of efficiency data, in the safety parameters, and it's very difficult to sell the same product between the different states. In 2018, it was a great step to the creation of regulation on plant biostimulant, because during inside the Farm Bill, the Agriculture Improvement Act, there is a first definition at US level for plant biostimulant. And as you can say, the definition is more or less the same than in Europe. There is only one exception, is that the fact that USA also underlines the fact that plant biostimulant can act to improve the yield of the crops. Since this date, there is a lot of work at EPA level, because in 2019, EPA published a first draft guidance for plant biostimulant. In the same year, USDA submit a report on biostimulant to the Congress. Then in 2020, AFCO established the first internal committee to develop biostimulant definition, labels, and model bills. In the same year, there is the start of discussion between the industry, USDA, and AFCO. Last year, in July, there is a creation of a working group with the mission to develop a model bill including biostimulant. And at the end of 2021, there is the first draft of the model bill. So we are on the process in USA to have an harmonized regulation for plant biostimulant. But during the same times, some states started to regulate plant biostimulant, and I will present to you the 4 well-advanced states. The first one in the New Hampshire. New Hampshire included in the House Bill 199 an amendment for the definition of plant biostimulant. So this definition is the definition that USDA proposed in the draft as alternative definition 2. So plant biostimulant means a substance, microorganism, or mixture that when applied to seed, plants, the rhizosphere, soil, or other grow media act to support a plant natural nutrition product. That is first improvement in New Hampshire to define plant biostimulant. The second state is Delaware. They also amend into the Senate Bill 96 the regulation. There is some modification, but today there is no official definition in Delaware. They just mention the fact that the Department of Agriculture of Delaware may adapt policy and regulation to permit the registration and the distribution of plant biostimulant when the use, the registration, or the distribution of them is permitted by the AFCO. But it's an improvement of the regulation of the Delaware. Then we have the Vermont. the Vermont Act for one include now definition, labeling requirement, but also a procedure of registration for plant biostimulant. And there is the definition, the current definition in Vermont. It's more or less the definition that we have since the beginning in USA, and the definition could be amended depending the work that it will be done as the global at the federal level. So it's important to know that in Vermont now, each formula or brand or grade should be registered and labeled according to this act, and the registration should be renewed each year. And the last state that we will present today is Utah. Utah in the House Bill 248 include the definition of plant biostimulant. And for the same state, we have now each brand or grade must be registered and labeled according to this House Bill, and the registration is on the annual basis. There is only one little difference on the definition in Utah with the definitions that we have today in Europe or that USDA proposed in the Farm Bill, is the fact that plant biostimulant enhance the resistance to plant pests. So it's perhaps borderline on that, but it's an improvement on the fact that now some states are pioneer in the regulation and the possibility to put on market real plant biostimulant. So the next step in USA, there is that is not the final aspect, because we have only 4 states with the regulations. There is no common definition between these 4 states. So AFCO will continue the work to try to have an harmonized plant biostimulant definition, but also to develop standards to check plant biostimulant. EPA guidance document is awaited in the next few months, so we will have a more strong basis for the evaluation of plant biostimulant, and this work will be facilitate the exchange between states and also to facilitate, and we hope to have the same rules to put on market plant biostimulant in USA with the same label requirement, with the same safety parameters, and so on. So the work is in progress, but is a good basis on that. So now we will go in another part, and it's India, and Laetitia will present where we are in India.
So in India, the regulation of 1985 relating to fertilizers has been amended this year, last year in 2021, and includes the definition of biostimulant as a substance or microorganism or a combination of both, with primary function when applied to plants, seeds, or rhizosphere is to stimulate physiological processes in plants and to enhance its nutrient uptake, growth, yield, nutrition efficiency, crop quality, and tolerance to stress, even if it has not a nutrient content, but does not include pesticides or plant growth regulator, which are separately regulated under the Insecticide Act. So it's a good news, and this definition is close to the one of the Europe. So biostimulants shall be classified under different categories, including botanical extract, biochemicals, protein hydrolysates and amino acids, vitamin, cell-free microbial products, antioxidants, antitranspirant, humic and fulvic acid and their derivatives. So if you want to put a product on the market in India, your active ingredient has to be classified under of this one of this category. To register a product, a dossier shall be submitted, and this dossier shall contain chemical data on the active substance and the product, bioefficacy trial that have been that has to be conducted in India at 3 doses for 1 season and under 3 agroecological locations. Toxicity data from GLP labs, which includes also acute toxicity and ecotoxicity tests. EV metals have to be reported too, and the manufacturer has to supply a sample with a statement that this product does not contain any pesticides beyond the limit of 0.01 ppm. This dossier shall be submitted in the 6 months period from the publication of the order and enable to obtain a provisional certificate of registration. So in the same area, I'll let Benoît speak about China.
Yes. So for China, there is also good news by end of last year, because China published the agricultural standard called NIT 3831. So the publication was last 1st November, and the title is Organic Water Soluble Fertilizer General Regulation. So it's not biostimulant, but inside we have a definition of plant biostimulant. Just to be clear about the situation in China there is no one way to put on market fertilizing product, but we have possibility to use this kind of standard, but we could have also some more regional standard and so on. But this referential standard will facilitate the access on the market of plant biostimulant. So the Chinese definition of plant biostimulant is the following. So biostimulant is an ingredient that enables plants to stimulate their growth through the synthesis of growth-promoting substances and or through nutritional processes that are not affected by nutrient substances. Achieve the goal of improving plant nutrient utilization or absorption rate, improving resistance of abiotic stress, and or improving crop quality traits. So more or less, we are on the same way that plant biostimulants are classified as by the claim and not by the content. But in this agricultural standard, there is a classification and general rules on the raw materials. We have also some information regarding the nutrient and the harmful contents. We have information on the labeling requirement and the standard to be used for the testing. If we go inside this agricultural standard, so organic water soluble fertilizer are classified according to the raw materials. And we have a list of allowed raw materials. So the free amino acids, the mineral derived from humic acids, the seaweed extraction, chitosan, polyglutamic acid, polyaspartic acid, and the molasses and low value fish and its fermented product. Other raw material, organic raw material or microorganisms or nutrients could be added inside the organic water soluble fertilizer to create some blends. So it's also to give more flexibility. And it's also important to know that there is some other agricultural standard in China, more specific on some part of component of plant biostimulant, like the NI 1429 covering amino acids, and the NI 106 covering organic water-soluble fertilizer containing humic substances. These two categories are directly reviewed and approved by the Ministry of Agriculture and registered under the generic name of organic water-soluble fertilizer containing amino acids. But we must keep in mind that is more or less the concept of plant biostimulant covered by this agricultural standard. There is also some other water soluble fertilizer standard and we have some clarification on the requirement on labeling, but also regarding to the raw materials, there is some specific data for the manufacturing process, the use, the toxicity test, and the efficacy trials. So it's important improvement on the regulation in China for plant biostimulant, but as I said at the beginning, is not the final point, because this standard is not mandatory, but it's just to help and to facilitate to classify this kind of product on the Chinese market. So now we will go back in America, but in in Africa. The first one, we will go in South Africa, and Laetitia will present the South African regulation.
Okay, so in South Africa, the Act number 36 of 1947 regulates fertilizers and farm feeds, agricultural and stock remedies, sterilizing plants, and pesticides. So biostimulants are not directly included in the regulation, but are considered as fertilizer group 3, which are described as natural or synthetic substance or microorganisms that improves the growth or yield of plant or the physical, chemical, or biological condition of the soils. This product includes seaweed, organic acids, biofertilizers, PGPR, fertilizer coating, and moisture absorption product. On the other hand, in a guideline published in June 2019, the notion of biofertilizer, plant biostimulant, plant growth enhancer, and plant strengthener were introduced and defined as any substance or microorganism or combination thereof, which is applied to seed, plant, or root environment capable to modify, improve plant development through a collection of different mechanisms of action. So it is important to note that in South Africa, a product can be considered both biostimulant and biopesticides, but the registration has to be done for each effect. So a product which claims 2 effects will have 2 different registration numbers. So on a practical way to register a process and to label a product, it's needed to submit a form, an analysis of the active ingredient if its chemical composition is known, to supply a COA for heavy metal and contaminants. Then the manufacturer has to prove the efficiency of the product and there is no harmful effect on plant or soil. Of course, MSDS and other documents have to be supplied to complete the dossier. There is some specific data which are required for product which contains microorganisms, even if they are manufactured in South Africa or imported. This data are necessary. Also for fulvic acid, humic acids, and amino acids, and for seaweed and product of animal and plant origin. With regard to labels, at least the labels should contain concentration of the product, of the active ingredient, name of the main ingredient, the claims, which are linked to the proof of efficiency, instruction of use, and there is also some specific requirements for microbial products. So now let's go on the other side of the ocean in Chile with Benoît.
Okay, thanks. So also in Chile, there is some news. Last June, there is a new regulation, and this definition concerns the composition, the labeling, and the marketing of fertilizer and biostimulant. This regulation includes for the first time a definition of plant biostimulants. So plant biostimulants are defined like substance or mixture of substance or microorganisms applicable to seed, plant, or rhizosphere, which stimulate the natural processes of plant nutrients in order to improve efficiency in the use of nutrients, abiotic stress, tolerance, quality attributes, or availability of immobilized nutrients in the soil or in the rhizosphere. There is an obligation to be registered via the unique national register. So there is a registration system. To obtain the registration of plant biostimulant in Chile, we have and we must respect some data and some parameters, and there is some specific requirement for the labeling. So first one, we have to declare the nutrient content and the other relevant component. We have also some obligation to clarify the impurity and the contaminant. We have to precise the quality parameters, so the solubility and or the granulometry. We must declare the intended use, the origin, to provide the detail on the manufacturer, and then the specific information regarding the batch, the date of importation, manufacturing, and production. So, as we can see, a country like Chile takes the examples that we have in other part of the world by using the classification of plant biostimulant by the claim and not by the nature of the product. So we will finish the trip around the globe with the 2 stops in Brazil and Mexico. And Laetitia will conclude this webinar.
Yeah, so for Brazil and Mexico, there is no specific regulation in these 2 countries. In Brazil, the Lei Ordinária includes some products which can be considered as biostimulants, inoculants, and stimulants or biofertilizers. So these products are defined for inoculant as a substance containing microorganisms with the action favorable to plant development. And stimulant or biofertilizers are defined as products containing active ingredient capable of improving directly or indirectly the development of the plant. So these 2 kind of products are close to the definition of biostimulants, but they are now separated. So what it is important in Brazil, it's for the moment, it's not possible to claim any stimulating action. If we claim something like that, we fall into the scope of the pesticide regulation, which is different from the Lei Ordinária. And it's important to know that at present, there is a lot of work of the industry to create a specific regulation on biostimulant, but a lot of work has to be done to harmonize the role for biostimulants. On Mexico, biostimulant can be classified as vegetal nutrient, organic, inorganic, or organominerals. So it's a general classification. And to put a product on the market, it is mandatory to register it with a dossier containing chemical and biological analysis if the product is from organic origin, analysis of heavy metals and pathogens when product is organic, biological effectiveness, label, SDS, TDS, etc. So it's an improvement because biostimulants are not out of the market, but there is no specific regulation in Mexico. So to conclude, we can observe that there is still a lack of homogeneity in the definitions and in the registration process also at international level, and in some cases at national level, as you can see in US, for example. But there is a standardization work ongoing in Europe first with a technical specification which will be ready for this spring and which will be followed by UN standards. And at international level, the ISO TC 134 is working on global definitions and on microorganism characterization. So it's a good point to have an harmonization worldwide. It's important to note also that the European regulation is often considered as the most complete regulation, and some countries are inspired by the European regulation to adapt it on their country. And of course, you can find some regulatory and standardization updates on biostimulant.com. So thanks a lot for your attention. And if you have some comments or questions, we are here to answer.
So thank you both for the nice presentation and for giving us a clear overview about biostimulant legislation in different countries around the world. So now we will have a Q&A section. We have already received many questions, so I will start immediately with the first one so that we can try to answer to as many as possible. Firstly, we have two questions for Europe and related to microorganisms. So we have seen the CMC list and a list or a positive list about microorganisms. So the first question is, will it be possible to insert a new microorganism in the positive list? And the second one that is strictly related is, what about microorganisms that are currently outside of this list?
Okay. So regarding the addition of new microorganisms, some works are ongoing between European Association and the European Commission. But so they are defining the process to have the better evaluation of these microorganisms, because sometimes the action of the microorganism can be both biostimulants and pesticides. So they need to have a clear view on how to put the good microorganisms on the list. So work is ongoing, but for the moment, we have not any idea of the timeline to do this. But in principle, the regulation enables to add some microorganisms in this list. And then the second question, can you repeat, Erika? Sorry.
The second question was about what about microorganisms that are outside of this list?
Yeah. So as mentioned at the beginning, the European regulation does not repeal the national regulation. So for other microorganisms, it's still possible to put them on the market on countries under national law. So it's not easy, but it is a solution.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is about the US. So Benoît, it's for you. We have seen many regulations in different countries in the US. The question is it possible to market the same product in different states with the same label?
Today, no, because as I said, USA is not yet, we don't have a federal regulation on plant biostimulant. So each state has its own rules, and depending the rules, we can or we cannot put plant biostimulant on the market. So that is why the important job made by the USDA, EPA, but also AFCO and the representative of the producer like BPA and Biostimulant Council will, and I hope, will facilitate the fact that we will to have one label for the federal aspect in USA. So today, no, it's not possible. Each state has its own regulation, its own process, and we have to fulfill the specific requirement. But we hope that in the future we will have one definition, one requirement for safety and efficacy of biostimulant, and one labels.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we will go back to Europe again. Many questions about Europe. So Laetitia, we have a question for you. It says, will it be possible to get the CE mark even if all technical specifications are not yet available? So it means how the producer of biostimulant and the control body will evaluate the conformity of biostimulants towards the new EU regulation 2019-1009 if all the technical specifications are not available on July 2022.
But perhaps I will reply on it because I'm more involved on standardization aspect as the chairman of CNTC 455. So first of all, I will say all TS covering plant biostimulant will be available in April. So it's and I would like and I will thank all experts involved on CNTC 455 because we work very hard during the last year to respect the deadline that the Commission asked for that. So in July 2022, for sure, all the technical specification will be available to check the quality of plant biostimulant. So it's important to know that the technical specification and the next step, the European standard, and this standard will be harmonized by the publication on the official journal, will give us the presumption of conformity. So it means that when we will check the plant biostimulant by using an harmonized standard, we will have the presumption of conformity of the method. So it means that we don't have to demonstrate and to justify the choice of the method. But we have the possibility to use other relevant standards and methods to define plant biostimulant, to check the safety parameters, and so on. So it's free and it's up to the producer to use the relevant method. But in the case where we don't use the harmonized standard, we will have to justify during the inspection made by the notified body why we use this standard, and the notified body could ask more detail on the standard, could ask to justify the choice and the quality on this standard. So that is why the European Commission asked the CNTC 455 to create harmonized standard. It's just to facilitate the evaluation, but also to ensure a high level of quality of the standard to evaluate plant biostimulant. But it's free and we can use internal method if we want.
Okay, thank you. Hando, I think we have time just for a couple more questions. We have another question about the European registration process related to the new EU regulation. So we have seen in your presentation two specific modules to obtain the registration, module B plus C and module D1. And the question is if can we choose the modules we want to get certified for a biostimulant? And if you can explain briefly what are the differences between these two modules.
Okay. So on a general principle, of course, you can choose a module. I would say that it will depend on the number of products you will want to evaluate. If you have only some product, maybe it could be more easy. It could be easier to choose a module B plus C, which is on the principle of each product is evaluated by the notified body, the certification body. So you realize a dossier with several pieces and you send to the evaluation body for each product. If you have a lot of products and you don't want to realize several dossiers, you can choose to evaluate the quality assurance of the process and to choose module D1. In that case, the manufacturing plant will be audited and you will have to implement some quality documents to have the certification of the company and the manufacturing plant for the whole production process. So it's up to the manufacturer to choose the module. but on a general way, it will depend on the number of products to be evaluated.
Okay, thank you. And the last question to close this webinar of today, we will go to Mexico. We have specific questions for Mexico. It's about biological effectiveness. So if in Mexico must be tested in the country with trials, or could it be based on technical articles, for example? Just if you can say something more to explain about biological effectiveness in Mexico.
So it's in some countries there is this kind of requirements to prove that the product realizes the efficiency for what it is claimed. In general, biological effectiveness is required in the same area, but it's not always the case. So if you want more detail, I need to check more. But
no, just to reply on it, in Mexico we have to perform trials in Mexico. So it's one requirement of the regulation. So it's important, and for registration of this kind of product is more or less 2 years, because we have to perform trials in Mexico, because that is a regulation. So the use of, in general speaking, not specifically for Mexico, but for plant biostimulant, is more or less the same approach that we could have in pesticide. It's important to have trials made in a specific area, because the condition could be different, the crops could be different, and so on. So today, for Europe, we need to have at least trials made to justify the fact that the plant biostimulant is effectiveness, have good effectiveness. We cannot in Europe provide only scientific data, because it's not relevant. So that is why each country, but that is the same discussion that we have today in USA or in some other part. We need to perform trials based on the final product in the specific condition of the region where we want to put on the product. So that is important, just to be sure that the product works. And also, if we don't perform this kind of trials at national level, at the end, the farmers or the distributor will ask to perform trials in the real condition of the area where we want to sell the product. So it's better, I think, to have trials made locally than to reuse scientific data, perform in labs or in specific conditions that are not the real condition of the use of the plant biostimulant.
Okay, thank you very much, you both, for the answers. As I said, it was the last question, because we are arrived at the end of this webinar. I would like to thank you again for the insightful presentation of today. And I would like to also to thank everybody for attending the webinar. Please, if you still have questions, don't hesitate to submit them on biostimulant.com website, and our experts will get back to you with the answers. I would like also to remind that the recorded version of this webinar will be available on biostimulant.com and on our social media in the next days. So have a nice day, everybody, and see you on the next webinar. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.